I followed my husband's mistress. Her life was glamorous. She lived in a villa in an upscale neighborhood, drove a car worth over $1 million, and carried herself like a rich heiress. Even when she went on dates with my husband, she would leave right on time. Sorry. My dad is very strict. To defend my marriage, I secretly took photos and sent them to her so-called strict father. Do you know your daughter is out here being a mistress? After a long time, he finally replied, "Got it. I've been cheated on." Chapter 1. I stared at my phone screen, completely confused for a while. Why did he say he was cheated on? I'm the one who got cheated on. Maybe the old man made a typo. After all, finding out your daughter is someone else's mistress would make anyone's hands shake. I patiently corrected him, "Sir, I'm the one who got cheated on. Your daughter is secretly seeing my husband." After thinking about it, I added, "If typing is inconvenient, we can talk on the phone." He only replied with a few words, "Let's meet and talk." Chapter 2. Before this, I assumed Tiffany's father had to be at least 50. Unexpectedly, he looked very young. Even if wealthy people take good care of themselves, they shouldn't look like the man sitting across from me, dressed in a sharp suit, with deep-set eyes and thick hair. But this was my first time doing something like this. How should I even start the conversation? "I didn't expect you to look so young. Like you're not even 40. He slightly raised his gaze and looked at me. 33. I froze. Huh? 33. He pressed his lips together. Oh, I quickly took a sip of coffee. At the peak of awkwardness, I somehow blurted out, "Then you must have had a child really early." He fell silent for a moment, his fingers resting on the rim of the cup. "Actually, I'm not her biological father." It took me a second to process. "You're her stepfather?" "Something like that." He lowered his head and took a sip of water. I nodded. "No wonder you look so young." He took a deep breath, glanced at me, then pulled out a business card from his coat and placed it between us. "My name is Hugh. Let's get straight to the point." He withdrew his hand. "About Tiffany and your husband, I want to hear every detail." I tightened my grip on the coffee cup. "Okay." Chapter 3. My husband, Isaac, runs a somewhat well-known piano training center. Tiffany was his student. She had been taking lessons for over a year. I didn't know exactly when they got involved. 3 months ago, I went to see him, and I caught them hugging and kissing on top of the piano. At that moment, my heart practically stopped. I wanted to rush forward and push the door open, but my pride and rationality suffocated me, leaving me unable to move. Even though my vision blurred, my mind was strangely calm. I memorized that girl's face, went to the office, and checked the student records until I found her name, Tiffany. She was young, beautiful, tall, and enrolled in premium lessons that cost $5,000 per session. She had paid for 32 sessions, a total of $160,000. For a girl her age, that's not a small amount, I said. Hugh listened expressionlessly. I remember she once asked me for $200,000, so she had pocketed $40,000 for herself. I couldn't help but scoff inwardly. Having a father willing to throw money around must be nice. Since I had only caught them once, I wasn't sure if it was just a fleeting flirtation or something long-term, so I started following her. I didn't expect Tiffany's life to be so dazzling. She didn't work, slept until the afternoon before going out, drove luxury cars worth over $1 million, and lived in a villa in an affluent neighborhood. Her days consisted of afternoon tea with friends, golf, and tennis. After following her for half a month, I was starting to feel depressed. To be honest, I'm surprised. Her conditions are so good, I don't understand how she could fall for my husband. Hugh's expression darkened slightly, his lips pressed tight. Would it be all right for me to understand your husband's financial situation? I answered frankly. He has a PhD in music. He left academia a few years ago to start his own business. His annual income has just reached 7 figures. $1 million? Hugh seemed genuinely incredulous. He curled his lips slightly, then looked me up and down before asking with certainty, "So, is he very good-looking?" I handed him my phone and showed him a photo of Isaac. "He's all right. Not even as good-looking as you." He instinctively looked up at me, narrowing his eyes slightly, his tone turning subtle. "You think I look better than your husband?" I froze for a moment. Was that what I meant? No, I mean, we're just ordinary people, not like you and your daughter. You both have such striking looks. He stared at me for a while, then suddenly took my phone. His fingers tapped lightly against the screen. He looks quite average. You're not. My heart skipped a beat. I gripped my phone and quickly pulled it back. Mr. Santos, I came to you because I want you to rein in your daughter. Of course I will. He nodded, lifting his gaze to meet mine. His tone neither warm nor cold. But I don't understand. Do you really think that by doing so, you can win your partner back? His words hit the most painful place in my heart like a heavy hammer. Of course not. I put away Hugh Santos's business card, stood up, took a deep breath, and looked down at him. I just don't want my ex-husband to have the chance to latch onto a rich woman after our divorce. Hugh remained seated, tilting his head back to look at me with interest. What's your name? I slowly extended my hand toward him. Elise. Chapter 4. When I got home, Isaac was moving his things into the study. I stood at the doorway and glanced at him. You're going to sleep in the study? He smiled at me, answering naturally. I've been working late recently. I don't want to disturb your rest. Oh, I ignored him, probably trying to stay pure for his mistress. I went into the master bedroom, took out the business card, and started searching online. I had gotten Hugh's phone number earlier from the property management office in Tiffany's residential area. Thankfully, the house wasn't under Tiffany's name. I wanted to know what exactly he did. To my surprise, when I entered Hugh's name, countless associated companies popped up, some of which I had even heard of. So, he's that rich. No wonder he gave that faint, almost helpless smile when he heard about a 7-figure annual income. Hey, want some coffee I made myself? Isaac suddenly appeared. I immediately shut my laptop, afraid he might see. A cup of hot coffee was placed in front of me. I have a female student. Her family is quite wealthy. Isaac took my hand. You know, I've been busy looking for investors lately. I invited her over for dinner tonight. Thought we could talk. I understood instantly and looked up at him. Which one? Tiffany. When Isaac said her name, his expression was completely casual, as if it had nothing to do with him. Sure. I curved my lips into a smile. Do you want me to cook? No. I'll do it. Isaac suddenly reached out and touched my face, his eyes full of warmth. You don't have to do anything. I met his gaze, feeling a moment of confusion. Maybe Hugh and I had different tastes. In my eyes, Isaac wasn't ordinary at all. He had a refined, understated look, a high level of education, and a gentle personality, the kind of man women would easily marry up for. If he had already changed his heart, why keep pretending so perfectly? At 6 in the evening, Tiffany arrived at my house. Isaac went into the kitchen to cook, leaving me to chat with her. I didn't expect Sister Elise to be this beautiful. She took the coffee, tilting her head as she smiled at me. I maintained my smile. Is it that surprising? Tiffany fell silent for a moment. But it must be exhausting for you, right? She looked away, toward where Isaac was, then said, Do you know why I came to your house for dinner? She turned back to meet my eyes. Because the property management staff told me that recently. A woman has been asking about me. My heart skipped violently. Did she already know? Tiffany leaned closer, lowering her voice. I came to warn you. I froze in place, my heartbeat accelerating, my palms damp with sweat. Chapter 5. Let's eat. Isaac's voice cut in, breaking the strange tension between Tiffany and me. At the dining table, Isaac chatted with her while picking food for me. I didn't take a single bite. Who would want to act in a play with no audience? Tiffany seemed unable to stand it either. She pointed her chopsticks toward the study. Mr. Isaac, are you sleeping in the study? Isaac replied gently. We've both been really busy with work lately, so we sleep separately. It helps us rest better. His words were deliberately vague, enough to make it sound like we had already separated. I couldn't even be bothered to expose his lie. Sure enough, Tiffany took it at face value and shot me a provocative smile. Expressionless. I set down my chopsticks and stood up. Excuse me, I'm going to the restroom. Then I turned and left. Isaac glanced at me instinctively, only snapping back to attention when Tiffany called him. Before continuing their serious discussion, He needed a 10 million investment to expand his piano training center. Sure, that works. My family has also been wanting me to try investing in some projects myself. Isaac, however, acted reserved. Tiffany, don't rush to agree. I'll send you the proposal. Take your time to review it. Okay. I'll listen to you. She nodded. I paused at the corner, took out my phone, and sent a message. Mr. Santos, Tiffany is at my house. As such a well-known businessman, if you can't discipline your daughter, I might have to do it for you. After a minute, he replied, go ahead. I'm tied up. My eyes widened. This man really made no sense. A moment later, I returned to my seat. Tiffany seemed to be in an excellent mood. She glanced at me. Mr. Isaac, if I become your partner, doesn't that make me half the boss's wife? Would Sister Elise mind? Isaac paused, then said seriously, you'd be half the boss. By now, I had had enough of the provocation and completely lost my appetite. I looked at Tiffany and spoke coldly. But for such a large sum of money, can Miss Tiffany really afford it on her own? She met my gaze fearlessly. It's nothing to me, as long as I want it. My family will support me. Isaac tugged at my arm. Elise? He shot me a warning look. I'm just worried she might be forcing herself, I said with an apologetic smile. Turning to Isaac, I know you've been looking for investors lately. Why don't you send me the proposal too? I happen to know a big-shot businessman who's very interested in this kind of thing. I slipped my hand into my pocket, touched the thin card, and without hesitation took it out and placed it on the table. Isaac froze for a moment, reading the name on it. Hugh. Across from us. Tiffany's expression changed instantly. She stared at me in disbelief, all her earlier arrogance gone without a trace. I quietly savored the shift in her expression. So she was afraid. The next second, Tiffany's phone rang. That special ringtone, sharp and sudden, startled all of us. Tiffany gripped her phone and sprang to her feet, her face tense. It's my dad calling. I'll take this. She rushed into the guest bathroom and shut the door tightly. I couldn't help but smile a little. Looks like Hugh finally had time and even remembered to call. Isaac asked what I was smiling about. A grown woman in her 20s still being this afraid of her parents, isn't that funny? Not really. Isaac didn't smile. He picked up the business card and looked at me. How do you know Hugh? I don't. A friend of mine knows his assistant. I reached out to take the card back, but Isaac avoided my hand and slipped it into his pocket. Then I'll keep it. Less than a minute later, Tiffany came out. Her face looked terrible. In a fluster, she said goodbye, claiming she had to go home. Even when Isaac offered to drive her, she refused. Isaac closed the door, muttering in confusion. What's wrong with her? Probably a good girl with strict parents. I had lost interest as well. I turned to head back to the bedroom, but after only a few steps, someone suddenly hugged me from behind. Isaac rested his chin on my shoulder, his voice soft, very soft. Wife. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, pushed his arms away, and turned around. Didn't you just say you were going to sleep in the study? Isaac froze slightly. His lips moved, but no words came out. Good night. I walked into the bedroom alone. Chapter 6. Tiffany hadn't come to class these past few days. I heard it from Isaac. Do you think something might have happened to her? He kept checking his phone, but no messages came through. Maybe it's about the investment. She couldn't come up with that much money, so she just cut contact, I said as I brushed past him and walked toward the door. You're really counting on her. Huh? Isaac frowned. He turned around and stared at me. Where are you going? To see a friend. I grabbed my car keys. You've been going out alone a lot lately. He sounded almost like he was complaining. Do you want to come with me? I met his gaze. He nodded and was about to walk over when his phone rang. He glanced at it, then looked at me apologetically. I've got something to deal with. So, okay. I cut him off and walked out the door. The friend I was going to meet was a divorce lawyer. The divorce agreement has been drafted. I handed over the photos I had taken while following Isaac and Tiffany on their dates, mostly hand-holding, hugging, and other intimate interactions. As evidence of infidelity, this isn't strong enough. I placed the photos back into the file folder, Then what level of evidence would you need to be confident in helping me secure all the assets? All the assets? I looked up and confirmed again. Yes, everything, including everything under his name. Before I left, the lawyer told me I needed more direct evidence. More direct. I opened my phone, located Isaac's car, and drove to where he was. It was a winding mountain road. Isaac and Tiffany were standing by the roadside. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but when Tiffany reached for his hand, Isaac pulled away coldly. Sitting in my car, I took the chance to snap photos, but when I checked them, I realized Isaac was looking in my direction. Damn it, he recognizes my car. My heartbeat quickened. When I looked up again, Isaac was already walking toward me. I can't let him catch me. I immediately made a U-turn and drove off. In the rearview mirror, Isaac's car was chasing closely behind. My heart raced as I stepped on the gas. Accelerating, I finally managed to create some distance, only for a car to appear slowly from around a bend. I slammed on the brakes and jerked the steering wheel, but still ended up in a serious collision. Damn it, and it had to be a Bentley. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel and had no choice but to get out of the car. Just as I was about to apologize, I realized the person stepping out of the other car was Hugh. You? Thankfully, he still remembered me. Hugh glanced at my rather aggressive-looking car. Practicing drifting? With nowhere else to turn, I had no choice but to ask him for help. I've been spotted. My husband's car is right behind. Hugh was speechless. He had his driver take my car away. I got into Hugh's car, he drove, and I sat in the passenger seat. My phone screen lit up with Isaac's name. I declined the call. It rang again. Only when Hugh told me to answer did I dare pick up. Wife, are you nearby? I think I just saw your car on the road. Isaac's voice carried undisguised tension. My car got into a minor accident. Someone probably drove it off for repairs. Oh, I see. Isaac sounded relieved. Are you okay? I'm fine. Where are you now? Do you want me to pick you up? I instinctively glanced at Hugh, paused for a second. No, I'll just get a cab. The call ended. Hugh Santos held the steering wheel and let out a soft laugh. You two are both very good at lying. I was momentarily speechless. The car drove along the winding mountain road, the scenery outside like a painting of deep green forests. Mr. Santos, this doesn't seem like the way back to the city. He replied casually. I have plans today, meeting someone for dinner. I was confused. Then, what about me? You're just catching a ride. Wherever it goes, that's where you go, right? Hugh turned to look at me, his tone matter-of-fact. I frowned, hesitating. You're meeting someone, what am I supposed to do there? His fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel, word by word. If you leave, it's considered a hit and run. I had no choice but to follow Hugh to dinner. The place was hidden deep in the mountains, a private restaurant not open to the public. Hugh's friends were already waiting for him. You're usually the most punctual. Why are you late today? Got into a car accident. Lucky to be alive. Chapter 7. Everyone fell silent. Sitting beside him, I felt like I was on pins and needles. Especially since my phone kept ringing during the meal. It was Isaac trying to reach me. I stood up. Someone glanced over, and Hugh explained on my behalf. Her husband is very strict. Huh? Now everyone turned to look at me at once. I stood there, opened my mouth, then decided to stay silent and went to answer the call. On the other end, Isaac's voice sounded strained. Why aren't you picking up my calls? I glanced at my screen, more than 10 missed calls. I'm having dinner with friends. What friends? Men or women? Do I know them? My head started to ache listening to him. You don't know them. Isaac fell silent. I hung up and was about to go back when I suddenly heard someone say, your taste is getting more and more unusual. Just an ordinary friend, Hugh said. Focused on his meal, everyone exchanged glances. After a moment, I returned to my seat, pretending I hadn't heard anything, but his friends suddenly became interested in me. Hugh, Elise looks very young. How many years have you been married? He looked straight at me. How many years? I felt awkward. 3 years. His friend continued. Then what do you do, Elise? Hugh turned his head. Right. You are a music teacher. I quickly answered. Not bad. He nodded in approval. His friend crossed his arms and glanced at him helplessly. How do you not know anything? Hugh put down his knife and fork. I know her husband cheated on her. Their marriage is falling apart. And they're about to divorce. Isn't that enough? The entire table fell into silence, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I'm done eating. I'll head back first. I couldn't sit there any longer and hurriedly fled. Unexpectedly, the moment I stepped outside, I saw Tiffany approaching from not far away. She was definitely here to find Hugh. I turned to avoid her, but walked straight into someone's chest. Hugh took half a step back and looked down at me. Didn't eat enough? I gave him a look. Tiffany is here. Only then did Hugh notice the figure in the distance. He grabbed my wrist, pushed me into the car alone, and shut the door neatly. Before he could get in, Tiffany ran over and started talking to him. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Tiffany kept crying, clearly emotional, while Hugh stepped back, speaking with a blank expression. I quietly cracked the car window open a little. The man's cold voice drifted in. You said you wanted to learn piano so you could play for me. Tiffany's voice was choked, broken. I didn't. Those things you said. I don't know if someone told you something. Hugh showed no emotion. It doesn't matter who said it. Let's end it here. Just as he opened the car door and was about to get in, Tiffany rushed forward, grabbed the door tightly, and suddenly dropped to her knees in front of him. Mr. Santos, I know. I was wrong. I didn't expect someone as proud as Tiffany to lower herself like this. Hugh looked at her calmly. Don't make this uglier than it already is. At that moment, my phone buzzed. Startled, I instantly silenced it. Tiffany froze for a second and tried to look into the car, but Hugh blocked her view with his body. She understood immediately. Her face went pale. He got into the car, glanced at me, and raised the window without a word. Enjoy the eavesdropping? I avoided his gaze, my heartbeat still unsteady. You're not her father. I never said I was. Just something similar. I stayed silent for a moment. Similar how? Hugh pressed the start button. Sugar daddy. I was speechless. The car began descending the mountain. He slid his finger across the dashboard and played an English song. I seriously felt like I was going to lose my mind because of him. Who would have thought that reporting the mistress would lead me straight to her sugar daddy? My first instinct was to apologize. Sorry. My husband cheated on you. Aw, the perfect wife. He suddenly remarked. I was so annoyed I forced a smile. Mr. Santos, you seem to have a problem with me. No, I got cheated on. This is just how I talk. He said, eyes on the road. Hope you understand. He had already said everything. I muttered quietly. I got cheated on too. Why should I be the one to tolerate you? He turned the steering wheel with one hand, not looking offended at all. Oh, so you only tolerate your husband. You. The car rounded a bend. The inertia made me sway slightly, cutting off my retort. The view of lush green mountains rushed into sight. The English song hit its chorus at just the right moment. I like driving this stretch the most, Hugh suddenly said. Chapter 8. I quietly admired the mountain scenery, but my phone kept vibrating, stopping, then vibrating again. Isaac was calling nonstop. Hugh noticed it too. He seems to be calling every 10 minutes. I turned off the screen. I don't know what's gotten into him lately. Hugh glanced at me. People who cheat often feel less secure than those who don't, because they know exactly what they're doing when they're the ones not answering calls. I almost laughed in disbelief. Is he seriously suspecting me? Looks like you're not planning to cheat on him as revenge, he said, withdrawing his gaze. I fell silent. After a while, the music suddenly stopped. Hugh's phone was ringing. He looked at the number, frowned slightly, and answered. Hello? Excuse me, is this President Santos's assistant? His Bluetooth was connected to the car, so the voice came through the speakers. I recognized it almost instantly. My body stiffened. Why was he calling this number? Hugh, still unaware, replied. This is Hugh. How did you get my private number? There was a 3-second pause on the other end. Then the voice turned cold. I'm Elisa's husband. Hugh Santos froze, saying nothing. I didn't dare make a sound either. Isaac's voice came through the speaker, laced with static. President Santos. Sorry to disturb you. I can't reach Elise. She said she was having dinner with you. Are you still together? Huh? Hugh looked at me in disbelief. I straightened up anxiously, waving my hands. I never said that. Isaac was testing him. Hugh understood what I meant. I'm not having dinner with her. You must have the wrong person. Then perhaps I was mistaken. Sorry for the disturbance. It's nothing. Hugh curled his lips slightly. But Mr. Isaac, if you can't reach your wife, you should call the police station, not randomly call a stranger. That's quite rude, don't you think? This time, Isaac fell silent for quite a while. President Santos, you're not married, so you don't understand my situation. Sitting at home alone, calling one person after another, it's embarrassing. But compared to that, I care more about where she is. He slowed his tone, emphasizing each word. I care more about who's destroying my family. Hugh's brows furrowed, his smile gone. So, did I offend you? Isaac sounded almost amused. I gestured frantically for Hugh to hang up. Hugh made an excuse. I have a meeting coming in. I'll hang up. Isaac's voice turned eerily calm. I didn't say my name was Isaac. Hugh hung up like he'd just seen a ghost. He stepped on the brakes, pulled over, and opened the window for air. He thinks I'm the other man. That's terrifying. Hugh muttered nonsense. This line of work must be really stressful. I sighed helplessly. You slipped up. What? Did you marry Sherlock Holmes? You're the one stalking, and he's the one interrogating? I let out a self-mocking laugh. An unhappy marriage breeds excellent detectives. Forget that. Hugh pressed his lips together, sounding displeased. How did he get my number? The business card you gave me. He took it. Then I'd better block him. Hugh lowered his head, fiddling with his phone. After a moment, he looked up at me. I've added you on WeChat. Accept it. I stood there, a little at a loss. He had already broken up with Tiffany. Why did he still want to add me? Was there really any need for us to stay in contact? Thinking back on everything that happened today, especially the moment Tiffany knelt before him, it lingered in my mind. Hugh was not simple. I really didn't want to get entangled with him. Mr. Santos, I'm not divorced yet. It's better if we don't keep in touch. He paused, lifting his gaze to look at me thoughtfully. What do you mean? I chose my words carefully. I'm a decent person. Oh, so I'm not. He let out a breath, leaning back into his seat, tilting his head slightly, eyes half closed. Your husband slept with my girlfriend. I didn't go after him. Instead, he calls to question me. You and I are completely innocent. Yet I'm being treated like the other man for no reason. He opened his eyes and looked at me. And now you're saying I'm not decent? Chapter 9. I'm not. He didn't give me any chance to speak. Every single day, I work, get scammed out of money, get cheated on. I'm really done with this. He suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt, got out of the car in large strides, walked around the front, yanked open my door, unfastened my seatbelt, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me out of the car. What are you doing? I shouted in panic. Hugh, this is a law-abiding society. There are cameras everywhere. Only now did I start to regret it. How did I dare get into his car? I didn't even know this man. I had just been fooled by his appearance, thinking he must be decent. You do know it's a law-abiding society? He dragged me forcefully to the front of the car and pressed me against the hood. I finally get a day off to have a meal. And halfway through I run into you speeding in the mountains. Do you even know the speed limit here is 40? How fast were you going? I froze, struggling to recall. 85? 85? If I hadn't been following traffic laws, you would have killed me. His palm pressed against the back of my neck, forcing me to look at the damaged area. Take a look at what you did to my car. And you still won't add me on WeChat, planning to run away? I felt both ashamed and nervous. Mr. Santos, I was wrong. It's entirely my fault. Only then did he lean down, his voice sharp as he threatened me in a low tone near my ear. Are you adding me or not? I'll add you. I'll do it right now. Pin me. Okay. Mark me as priority contact. Why do I need to mark you as priority contact? Hugh paused. My car is expensive. I'll be claiming compensation from you. Don't pretend you didn't see my messages. Fine, I chose to surrender. A ruthless capitalist, making so much money and still demanding compensation from me. And here I thought that meal I accompanied him to would cover it. Turns out I was being naive. We both squatted by the roadside. I took out my phone and operated it right under his watch. You're not allowed to block me from your posts. Okay. I want to be pinned above your husband. I finally snapped and glared at him. Hugh clapped his hands lightly and stood up. Forget it. Husband comes first. At last. We reached an agreement. Chapter 10. Half an hour later. The car entered the city. I asked Hugh to drop me off at the intersection to avoid being seen by Isaac. So what if he sees? Hugh casually saved the location in his navigation. I didn't want to deal with him. I reached to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. I nudged it with my foot. What a lousy car. People who've never ridden in a good car are always like this. Hugh unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned halfway toward me. I instinctively leaned back. He lowered his gaze slightly, looked at me, then reached out and pressed the switch on the side above. He kept looking at me, his lips moving slightly. It's open. I gave him a once-over, shoved him away, and quickly got out of the car, walking several steps ahead. When I turned back to take another look, the car was already far gone, almost out of sight, so he could drive fast. Dusk was settling in, streetlights flickering on one after another. After such a long day, I walked along the roadside, exhausted. Then I suddenly stopped. Isaac was standing ahead. Why are you here? He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, his expression normal. Didn't you say you were taking a cab? I figured you'd get off around here. He looked at me, the corner of his lips lifting slightly. Cars from outside can't really go further in. I didn't know if he had seen Hugh's car, since he didn't mention it. I chose not to either. I stayed silent. Isaac pulled me closer, lowering his head to smell my hair, as if confirming something. No alcohol, perfume, and gasoline? His nose was ridiculously sharp. Maybe in the next life, he should just be a dog. I pushed him away. I already said I got into an accident. Of course there's a gasoline smell. As long as you're okay. He took my hand. I didn't say a word. I forcefully pulled free, but he grabbed my wrist again, tightening his grip. What's wrong? He asked. We locked eyes. His feigned ignorance made me so angry that I gradually stopped struggling. Let's just leave it like this. Let it stay like this, until the day I'm finally free. When we got back, the dishes Isaac had cooked were still on the table, already a bit cold. I've eaten. His hand paused on the cabinet door. After a long, exhausting day, I went to take a bath, leaning against the tub while scrolling through my phone. Hugh's social media feed was filled entirely with reposted business updates, painfully boring. Partway through, Isaac came in. He took the laundry basket, preparing to wash clothes. I instinctively turned my body away, facing the other side. Suddenly, the atmosphere went quiet, unnaturally so. 2 fingers pressed lightly against the back of my neck. How did this happen? Isaac's voice came from behind me, cold and low. He was touching the spot Hugh had grabbed earlier. At that moment, even the bathwater seemed to turn cold. I bumped into something, I said without turning around. He took a deep breath, his fingertips rubbing the spot briefly before withdrawing. Then he placed a towel beside me. Be more careful next time. He went to do the laundry. I stared at the door, momentarily lost in thought. After drying my hair and sitting by the bed, I noticed it had already been made, 2 pillows neatly placed. I'm sleeping here tonight, Isaac said as he walked in from the balcony, explaining on his own. I'm almost done with work. I didn't say anything. I lifted the blanket and lay down. A moment later, the lights went out. In the darkness, the blanket beside me slowly shifted, bringing in the chill of the night air along with his familiar scent. His arm wrapped around my waist. Heavy. Baby. Isaac propped himself up, leaning down to nuzzle me. Who did you have dinner with today? I kept my eyes closed, pretending to sleep. Not long after, a hand slipped under my nightdress. I opened my eyes immediately and pressed it down. Isaac stared at me intently. You're pretending to sleep and ignoring me. I didn't avoid his gaze. Instead, I looked straight back at him. Who I have dinner with is my freedom. There's no need for you to call around and check on me one by one. Don't you think that's embarrassing? He seemed hurt by my words. Slowly, he lowered his head, his entire face sinking into the darkness. Unreadable. Elise. I didn't call everyone. I only called one of your colleagues to ask if you were at school. And one more. My heart instantly shot to my throat. I called Hugh. In the thick, suffocating darkness, Isaac's voice turned sharp like a blade, cutting through all ambiguity. So, you heard it from him, didn't you? That hand, separated only by the thin fabric of my nightdress, gripped my wrist. Or, were you right next to him when he answered? Why didn't you say anything? His voice was low and hoarse. Were you coaching him to lie to me? He sounded very convincing. Chapter 11. I kept my eyes open and swallowed. Isaac, are you suspecting me? You can explain. His voice was tense and clipped, as if something was stuck in his throat. Just a normal friend. I hit his car. He gave me a ride back. That's all. After saying that, I turned over and continued pretending to sleep. Isaac froze for a long time, then said in a muffled voice, I believe you. Not long after, he leaned over from behind and kissed my earlobe. Wife. I'm sleepy. I avoided his touch. But it's been so long. I moved a little farther away from him. Isaac didn't finish his sentence. He quietly lay back down. My eyes remained closed, but I couldn't fall asleep at all. Ever since I found out about him and Tiffany 3 months ago, I hadn't let him touch me again. Maybe I loved him too much. Just thinking about him being intimate with someone else made a wave of disgust rise from my throat. Unbearable. At 2:30 in the morning, Isaac was fast asleep. I quietly got up, took his phone, and opened his chat list. Tiffany's messages were hidden in a folded section. When I tapped in, I saw unread messages. Mr. Isaac, something happened at home. I won't be coming to class these days. I feel terrible. I kind of miss you. Did you catch up to her? Was that your wife's car? If she's really following us, don't you think she's disgusting? I stared at that last word, my eyes stinging. Other than these, there were no messages left. They must have been deleted. I checked the transaction records, nothing there either. Isaac was a careful man. I put the phone back. The person beside me instinctively reached out toward where I had been, but grabbed only empty space. I walked onto the balcony, wrapped myself in a blanket, crossed my arms, and looked up at the starless sky, feeling a loneliness I had never known before. I remembered my birthday in the first year after we moved in. That night, the balcony was filled with flowers of different heights, and he appeared holding a cake, the candlelight sparkling in his eyes. Elise, I love you. Why did it stop working? Love disappeared without any warning, yet everything still looked peaceful on the surface. I closed my eyes, wiped away the tears, and turned around. Unexpectedly, Isaac was standing quietly by the doorway. Who knew how long he had been watching? Up in the middle of the night, who are you thinking about? The man I had truly loved was already gone without a sound. What remained was just a shell, occupied by something unknown. I said I was thinking about you. Do you believe me? Isaac let out a self-mocking laugh. We brushed past each other. Chapter 12. The next morning, I was heading out to work when Isaac followed me into the elevator. I'll drive you. He reached out, trying to take my bag. I didn't move, looking at him in confusion. Isaac seemed to have completely forgotten what happened last night. He withdrew his hand and pressed the elevator button. Isn't your car in the shop? I happen to be going near your school today. It's on the way. He even remembered such trivial details. I'll take a cab. I had just taken out my phone when a hand snatched it away. I want to drive you. Isaac turned slightly to look at me. I pressed my lips together tightly. Suddenly, a sharp notification sound rang out. He frowned instantly and was about to check the screen, but I quickly grabbed it back. Didn't you used to hate setting priority notifications? That was before. I moved to the corner of the elevator and unlocked my phone. It was a message from Hugh. I switched to a different car today. What about you? I frowned. Picking a fight first thing in the morning? I'll treat you to breakfast. No time. Hugh didn't reply again. The elevator's here, Isaac said coldly. It was the ground floor. Isaac told me to wait while he brought the car around. But before he could leave, a pink car stopped in front of us. The driver stepped out and told me it was a courtesy car provided by the dealership while my car was under repair. I froze. A courtesy car? The man acted naturally, handing me the keys. Yes. Our staff contacted you earlier this morning. I nodded slowly. Isaac smiled. They're giving out such nice cars as loaners now? He stood beside me, lowering his head gently. Wife, why don't you take my car instead? I'll be your personal driver. After a brief hesitation, I took the keys and got into the car. No need. Focus on your work. In the rearview mirror, Isaac stood there expressionless, his figure growing smaller. I withdrew my gaze. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something on the passenger seat, flowers in a box. I reached over. It was still warm. It must be the breakfast he mentioned. The heaviness in my chest lightened slightly. At noon, I received a call, this time genuinely from the dealership. Miss, earlier your husband requested access to your vehicle's driving history and dashcam records. Did you give it to him? He seemed quite urgent at the time, saying it was for insurance claims. Yes, that's right. Also, he mentioned you needed a temporary vehicle. We have several available. Would you like us to deliver one? I tightened my grip on the phone. No need. Thank you. The call ended. A colleague teased me. Your husband's business must be doing great. He even got you a new car? That one's really expensive. I smiled awkwardly. It's a friend's car. Just borrowing it. She got even more excited. A friend? Male or female? Single? Want me to set you up? A knock on the office door interrupted her enthusiasm. Oh, Isaac's here. Guess I won't have anyone to eat cafeteria lunch with today. I looked up. Isaac smiled at me. He had come to have lunch with me. What are you doing here? Looking at locations. He said casually. The training center needs to expand. The old place is too small. This area has a strong artistic atmosphere. It'll also be easier to recruit people. My hand paused mid-motion. Did you secure the investment? Tiffany's family is cautious. They're only letting her put in $5 million. But with what I have, it's enough to get started. Isaac took my hand, looking at me steadily. It's not ideal, but I want to begin first. Build it slowly, and later, I can drive you to and from work. Hugh had already broken things off with Tiffany, yet she could still produce $5 million? Tiffany, that's not a small sum for an ordinary person. I said carefully. I didn't want to expose her lies, but I was more afraid Isaac would drag us into shared debt. Is she really some wealthy heiress? Are you sure? I've been to her house for dinner. Everything checks out. Isaac squeezed my palm, and the money's already been transferred. I had nothing left to say. Isaac still held my hand. So you saw me meeting Tiffany yesterday, didn't you? I met her to discuss cooperation. You saw it yourself. We were outside. Didn't even talk for long before I went after you. Elise, I didn't mean to cause your accident. I just didn't want you to misunderstand me. Really, he sounded regretful and self-blaming. If I'd known, I wouldn't have chased you. I stared at him, dazed, my only reaction being to pull my hand away. Isaac looked at his now empty hand, his expression falling. Ever since I quit my job to start this business, I've been under immense pressure. Sometimes I lock myself in the bathroom, cutting off all contact with the outside world. I didn't want to bring any of that to you, but I still failed to take care of you. He spoke more firmly, staring at me. But, Elise, I've realized my mistakes. We'll get better, better than before. I remained silent. Every word he said made sense. But the problem was, I didn't believe a single word anymore. The workday has started. I'll head back first. Chapter 13. After getting off work, I didn't head home right away. Instead, I went to Tiffany's villa complex. I had a suspicion that Hugh was playing me, that he hadn't really cut things off with her at all. I originally planned to wait outside, but to my surprise, Hugh had a private garage in the compound, so I simply drove in openly, as if I belonged there. Tiffany stood by the roadside with 3 suitcases, and next to her was a moving company's van. Was she moving out of this house? I had just parked when Tiffany ran over and started taking photos in front of my car. I got out and looked at her quietly. Still not getting the shot you want? Her expression stiffened. Is this your car? I didn't bother explaining. I glanced behind her. You're moving? She shrugged. I've lived here too long. This place is getting boring. I bought a new place downtown. She was probably kicked out, but thought I didn't know the inside story. Congrats on the new home, I said, finding it rather amusing. Tiffany studied me carefully. Thanks for the congratulations. I have some news for you too. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. Starting today, I'm going to take Isaac seriously. Before, I was just messing around with him, that's why I didn't bother with you. I thought carefully about what she said. Thank you for recognizing my good taste. You. Tiffany was left speechless. Two men in suits approached from a distance. The one in front looked familiar. It was Hugh's driver assistant. He saw me too. Miss, what are you doing here? He joked. President Santos is planning to sell one of the houses here. Interested? I even brought an agent along. You've got to be kidding. How could I possibly afford it? If you like it, you can afford it. When I turned my head, Tiffany had already run off. Her suitcases and the van were gone as well. The assistant didn't say anything, just smiled faintly. I asked him about the car compensation. He told me it was something President Santos had personally taken charge of. He's such a big boss. And he's handling something like this himself? The boss said, it's his beloved car. I was speechless. The assistant then called Hugh. He had booked a modern Chinese-style boat dinner and asked to meet me that evening. The boat was quietly docked by the lake, reflecting the dazzling night lights. Hugh arrived right on time. As soon as he stepped in, I stood up. The boat rocked slightly, and I lost my balance, falling forward into him. He reached out and steadied me firmly. Careful. Maybe the scenery tonight was too beautiful. He didn't say anything harsh. We sat facing each other. I sent you the bill in advance. Have you looked at it? Any issues? The dishes were prepared on a large boat in the middle of the lake, and the waitstaff rowed them over. So for most of the time, it was just the two of us on the boat. Mr. Santos, I know your car isn't cheap, so it's normal if the repair costs go over. I didn't argue about that. But what's with the lost income and emotional distress fees? And yesterday was the weekend. I work on weekends too. No days off all year. But the lost income fee is way too high. My income is high. Can't help it. I took a breath. The problem is, with a quote like this, the insurance won't reimburse me. I accept personal transfers. I took a deep breath, forcing down my emotions. Hugh, are you scamming me? His expression remained indifferent. Would you like to meet my lawyer? I stood up angrily and stared at him. After a moment of stalemate, I quietly sat back down. Mr. Santos, I'm just a university lecturer. I don't have much of a future. I only make about $10,000 a month. Even if I don't eat or drink, it would take me over 10 years to pay this back. And you know, my husband even cheated on me with a student. I've already had enough bad luck. Could you, maybe, go a little easy on me out of pity? Chapter 14. Hugh Santos reached out with his chopsticks and picked up a slice of bamboo shoot. The way you put it, it almost sounds like you're hinting at something, he said, glancing at me with a raised brow and a faint smile. Good thing I'm a decent man. Looks like your wish won't come true. I fell silent for a moment, then laughed in exasperation. You're the one. You clearly know I don't have money. Are you really short of this amount? Don't tell me you're not trying to make a move on me. Don't tell me all this, sending a car, inviting me to dinner, is just to get me to pay you back. Good. I'm glad we've finally said things out in the open. He suddenly set down his chopsticks, stood up, and met my eyes directly. I want to pursue you. I froze for quite a while, then stood up uneasily. If you were single, I might take it slow, but pursuing a married woman, first. I have to make sure she can get a divorce as soon as possible. Hugh took a big step forward. Instinctively, I stepped back and bumped into a small red lantern hanging in the cabin. He quickly raised his hand to shield my head. What do you think? The cabin was narrow. Standing this close made the space feel even more cramped. I turned my head to look outside. The lights on the boat swayed, and the reflections on the water swayed as well. I thought about it for a long time. I will get a divorce, but it has nothing to do with you. Hugh lowered his head and smiled. All right. He slowly turned around and stood beside me, shoulder to shoulder. I haven't been in a relationship for a long time. Tiffany was introduced by a friend, more like a backup girlfriend candidate. I'm busy with work, So things between us were pretty clean. Otherwise, I wouldn't have just let things go with Isaac. I turned back to face him. Why are you telling me this? Does it have anything to do with me? Hugh tilted his head slightly toward me, lowering his gaze as he deliberately slowed his voice. Since you told me things that had nothing to do with me, it's only fair I tell you things that have nothing to do with you. I was left speechless. A sudden evening breeze swept across the lake, as if an invisible hand had tapped lightly on the water. The boat rocked gently with the ripples. The sound of water lapped against the hull, creeping up through the floorboards and into my ears. Hugh went to the bow to take a look and quickly came back. It's starting to rain, he said, sitting down. Let's wait until it stops before leaving. Let's leave now. I braced myself against the cabin wall to steady my footing and glanced down at my phone. Spring rain doesn't always stop. He stood up again. All right. Why was he being so agreeable, not even trying to make me stay? He actually seemed like a decent man. Chapter 15. When I got home, the light in the study was still on. Isaac hadn't gone to bed yet. You're back? Isaac walked out. I responded casually and noticed the dining table was completely empty. You didn't come back to eat, so I didn't cook, he added. I ordered takeout. That's good. I headed straight for the bedroom, went into the bathroom, and turned on the tap. When I looked up, I saw Isaac standing by the doorway in the mirror, his expression disappointed. Will you come back for dinner tomorrow? I lowered my head and poured makeup remover into my hand. I've taken on a private piano student every day from 7:30 to 9:30 in the evening. Don't you hate private tutoring? Isaac didn't leave, but they're offering a very sincere price. I washed my face clean and turned to look at him. Just like your institute has so many teachers, but sometimes you still personally teach students. Isn't that because you're tempted by a high fee? Isaac stared at me for a moment, his tone turning cold. Is it Hugh? A very good student, isn't he? I didn't deny it. Isaac stepped forward half a step and suddenly grabbed my wrist. The force pulled me toward him. You're already married. Elise. His grip tightened, every word heavy, his breathing uneven. Do you think this is exciting? Then you should ask yourself. I didn't struggle. Instead, I stood on my toes to confront him, lowering my voice. If you think it's exciting, then I think it's exciting. If you think it's painful, then I think it's painful. Isaac looked at me in disbelief. Slowly, he let go of my hand. From that day on, Isaac treated me even better. Even though he knew I was seeing Hugh, he never expressed any dissatisfaction about it again. Maybe, deep down, he had realized that this relationship had already reached a point of no return, so he was doing everything he could to create the illusion of a last flicker of life before it died out. As for Hugh, whether he existed or not was never the key issue. Of course, during this time, Isaac also did many strange things I couldn't understand. For example, he deliberately bought the same cologne as Hugh and asked me if it smelled good. To be honest, the scent was very light. Before Isaac forced me to notice, I hadn't even realized Hugh had a fragrance. But the moment I smelled it, I immediately thought of him. Isaac muttered almost obsessively. If you like it, I'll use this from now on. I ignored him, but his behavior had already become a form of emotional manipulation for me. While I was playing the piano at Hugh's place, I couldn't help but say to him, "Why don't you switch to a different cologne?" Hugh stretched out his long fingers and pressed a few piano keys, producing a discordant sound. We're not even dating. Why should I accommodate him? I thought for a moment, closed the sheet music, and leaned against the piano, bending slightly to look at him. Then if I buy you a new cologne, will you use it? He looked up at me, clenched his hands slightly, and narrowed his eyes. Fine. A few days later, I picked one out for him. It was a trending fragrance. Many influencers were promoting it. Hugh opened it on the spot and tried it. Maybe the base note was a bit sweet, so he described it as smelling like an aging escort who had lost business and was desperately trying to compete for clients. The way he spoke was truly harsh. I seriously considered his analogy. I'd pay for that. I'm curious like that. Customer comes first. Only then did Hugh accept it. He turned to get me some red wine, and just then, the phone on the kitchen island vibrated. He walked over, glanced at it for a moment, and told me it was Tiffany. I coughed lightly and was about to step away. He said there was no need, answered directly, and turned on speaker. What is it? Tiffany's voice appeared again after a long time, mixed with sobs, gentle and pleading. Mr. Santos, I let you down, and you probably won't forgive me. It's all my fault. I truly regret it. I just want to see you one more time. You spent so much money on me, but we never even started anything. At least give me a chance to make it up to you, okay? I'm at a hotel right now. I'll keep waiting for you. I hadn't expected something this private. Chapter 16. Awkward. I pretended nothing had happened, turned my back to him, and took a sip of red wine. Hugh probably regretted putting the call on speaker. He didn't say a single word and simply hung up. She's inviting you like that, and you don't feel like going? I was genuinely curious what rich men thought of women throwing themselves at them. Hugh looked up at me, his tone indifferent. That kind of last meeting is usually a setup to scam money. Exactly how much did you give her? She actually managed to transfer $5 million in cash to Isaac? A breakup fee. Not as much as you think. If she really paid $5 million, she probably added some of her own money. Hugh didn't want to continue the topic. He stared at me, his gaze complicated. Why haven't you brought up divorce with him yet? My heart stalled for a moment, and I set down my glass. I need to find direct evidence of his cheating. Hugh cut me off, his tone meaningful. Is that for the lawsuit? Or for yourself? Both. I blurted out. There was nothing to hide. I even repeated it for emphasis. Both. I need it too. Hugh looked at me for a while, didn't press further, and instead walked over and gently pulled me into an embrace. Got it. The hug wasn't tight, it was extremely gentle, carrying no romantic or possessive undertone. What it conveyed was only understanding, support, and encouragement. When I lowered my head, I could still catch a faint scent. It was the cologne he had just tried. Only up close did I realize the bass note was indeed sweet. And the closer you got, the sweeter it became. He rubbed my hair lightly with his palm. Don't make me wait too long. The divorce agreement between Isaac and me was lying in my bedside drawer. I hadn't locked it. Isaac cleaned the room every day. Maybe he had seen it. Maybe he hadn't. Or maybe he had seen it and was pretending not to, waiting for me to bring it up. My lawyer told me that if I wanted a quick divorce, it would be best to get the other party to sign an agreement. After all, if you file a lawsuit, it could drag on for years. Getting Isaac to agree to an amicable divorce was almost impossible. So from the very beginning, I had been preparing for litigation. Why are you suddenly advising me like this? The lawyer smiled. I just feel like you're more anxious than before. I paused for a moment, maintaining a polite smile. When I got home, Isaac had prepared a full table of dishes. You said you'd come back for dinner tonight, so I came home early and even bought a fish. Come to think of it, I haven't made something this complicated in a long time. Looking at the abundant meal, a sense of melancholy welled up in my heart. Thank you. Isaac froze for a second, then forced a smile. My hands are a bit dirty. I'll wash them. Let's eat together. The meal was very quiet. Afterward, Isaac stood up and carried the dishes into the kitchen. He asked if I wanted to go watch a movie. Back when we were in school, I watched this movie with you on a computer. It's being re-released this week, and the picture quality is amazing. Didn't you say you owed it a movie ticket? The sound of running water blurred his voice a little, but he seemed to be in a good mood. I took a deep breath. Isaac, actually, there's something I want to tell you. His back stiffened for a moment. Isaac turned off the tap. The dishes were left piled in the sink. But he didn't care. He turned around to face me, a smile on his face, though his words came out rushed. I've found a new venue. Renovation is about to start. I already sent you the design plans. Have you seen them? They're really nice. He lowered his head, his voice slightly choked. I'll probably be busy again lately. I'll have to personally keep an eye on the renovation. He rambled on incoherently, wiped his hands dry, then took out his phone, saying he had something to deal with before heading out. I sat alone in the living room for a long time. I pulled up the movie he mentioned and watched it from beginning to end. The end credits were still rolling. I placed the divorce agreement on the desk in the study, but from that day on, Isaac never came back. What I didn't expect even more was that I ran into Tiffany at school in a one-year music appreciation training class. Ms. Elise. Long time no see. I stood on the podium, not having spoken yet, when Tiffany greeted me openly without the slightest hesitation. The way she looked at me told me everything. She came here for me. Chapter 17. Sure enough, after class, Tiffany walked up to the podium. Ms. Elise. Let's add each other on WeChat. If there's anything I don't understand, I can ask you right away. Some students hadn't left yet, and from time to time, people glanced over at us. I looked at her for a moment, then added her. Although this course was aimed at non-professionals from the public, it required an interview, and most of the students were still industry insiders. I went to see the department head. She looked surprised. She was recommended by Isaac. You didn't know? I froze for a moment. As soon as I left, I called Isaac. He didn't answer at first. I kept calling until he finally picked up. Why did you arrange for Tiffany to come here? I almost gritted my teeth as I spoke. That was something from before. She said she wanted to experience campus life, so I helped put in a word. What's wrong with you? He sensed that something was off in my tone. I crouched behind the teaching building, my back against the wall, gripping my phone tightly, my vision blurring. Isaac, do you have even the slightest bit of respect for me? I didn't mean to. Then why did you bring her into my workplace? I finally broke down. Tears streamed down my face, my voice choking. Why don't you consider my feelings at all? Do you even realize you've already resigned from the school? But I still have to work here. I have colleagues. I have supervisors. Even if you don't love me anymore, could you at least not treat me like this? I was crying so hard I could barely breathe, my fingers clutching my hair. Don't I have any dignity? Your job is busy, stressful, but mine means nothing? Why? Why did you have to bring her here too? Isaac's solution was to have Tiffany withdraw from the program, but I refused. If she dropped out now, the department head would definitely figure out what kind of relationship existed between the three of us. All I could do was reduce my teaching load as much as possible. Even so, I couldn't completely avoid Tiffany. During a practical class, she played a piece beautifully. The other students looked at her with newfound respect. She stood up, turned toward me, and smiled faintly. My piano was taught by my boyfriend, Ms. Elise. What do you think? Right in front of the entire class. She openly provoked me. I remained calm. It's quite good. After class, when everyone had left and I was packing up, Tiffany walked up to me. When are you divorcing him? I looked up at her and asked seriously, is there any benefit? Of course, you checked his hotel records but found nothing, right? I remained silent. Tiffany gave a half smile. One hand rested on the edge of the podium as she stepped up slightly. Have you ever been to a place like this? There's nothing there, just cold lines. When you go in, you can only stand. But everywhere are points of leverage. You can choose any one of them and completely hand yourself over to the other person. At the same time, you completely control them as well. I had no idea what she was talking about. Tiffany didn't mind and simply smiled. Ms. Elise, you're so beautiful, and your job is stable and respectable. If people find out that your husband got involved with your student, how are you going to stay at this school? I heard your parents are also university staff. Can they really afford that kind of humiliation? She was threatening my career. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Should I tell her I already wanted a divorce, and the one refusing was Isaac? What difference would that make? She was threatening me, and even using my parents' reputation against me. At worst, I could change jobs, but my parents were close to retirement if they became the subject of gossip. It would be unbearable. I was just about to speak. Suddenly, a firm voice came from not far away. If I expose all the dirt about you begging to be kept and acting as a mistress, do you think you'll still be able to stay in this school? I have your videos, photos, and even handwritten apology letters. I could post them for 3 days and nights and still not finish. Tiffany turned around in shock, clearly not expecting this person to appear. Mr. Santos? Chapter 18. At some point, Hugh Santos had appeared at the back door of the classroom. Expressionless, he walked in. Tiffany took the initiative to speak to him, lowering her voice. Mr. Santos, what brings you here? Hugh glanced at her, his tone flat. Weren't you the one who wanted to see me so badly? Tiffany froze for a moment, then pressed her lips into a smile. How did you know I was here? Hugh ignored her after that. He walked past Tiffany, came to my side, and loosely placed an arm around me. Who were you threatening just now? He was backing me up. Disbelief flashed in Tiffany's eyes, her expression turning complicated. She began to stammer. You too, you're his new flame? So it's you. Elise, you actually stole my man. How could you do something like that? There's no need for me to explain anything to you. Tiffany clearly wanted to confront me, but with Hugh present, she could only suppress her anger. Mr. Santos, she lied to you, she's married. Hugh's expression didn't change. No need to remind me. He walked me out of the room, then stopped and turned back to her. Take sick leave for the next few days. After that, find a reason to withdraw. Don't come back. His tone turned cold as he delivered the warning. If you don't handle this properly, you know the consequences. Hugh had come to pick me up for dinner. Thank you for helping me in that situation just now. If he hadn't shown up, I would have had to lower my head to Tiffany, but I didn't want to bow. I would rather force myself to stand firm even if people thought I had an inappropriate relationship with Hugh than lower my head. So I was truly grateful to him. Hugh still looked as calm and detached as ever. It's only right. If I hadn't cut things off so decisively, she wouldn't have pushed your husband into marriage. I gave a helpless smile. A week later, Tiffany completed her withdrawal procedures. She came to see me specifically, but her attitude had completely changed. She pleaded with me not to expose her in front of Isaac, not to reveal that she had been involved with Hugh. She also promised that she wouldn't tell Isaac about me and Hugh. Your personal life has nothing to do with me, and my situation with Hugh doesn't need you to cover for it either. MS. Elise. Everything before was a misunderstanding. Now that you have President Santos, there's no conflict of interest between us anymore. Even if you don't like me, for his sake, you'll get a divorce, right? She looked at me with hopeful eyes, but when I didn't respond, her eyes gradually reddened. I know I wronged you, but I really do like Isaac. I lied about my identity, but my feelings for him were real. For him, I gave up a generous man like Hugh. You have no idea, just to fulfill what I promised Isaac. I took out all the money I had, including the breakup fee President Santos gave me. Tiffany left. After she withdrew, rumors about her spread among the students, saying she always pretended to be a rich, elegant girl, but her house was rented, and even her designer bags were obvious fakes. Even the department head got curious and asked what relationship she had with us. I brushed it off. Just a relative of a friend's family. We're not that familiar. She's quite pretty. The department head commented casually. I thought she might be your relative. You're both so good-looking. I felt like I had narrowly escaped disaster. Then the department head suddenly asked me, how do you know the president of Hank Group? I froze for quite a while. Who? Boss Santos. He said you introduced him. About the teaching building donation, he personally donated 3 whole buildings. There's going to be a donation ceremony in a few days. Make sure you attend. What? What was he even doing? On the day of the ceremony, I was arranged to go on stage to give thanks. Hugh accepted my flowers, then shook my hand and gave me a brief hug. Everything about his demeanor was perfectly official, except for his rather bold cologne. Coincidentally, the vice dean had a bit of rhinitis and couldn't help sneezing. Afterward, he still insisted on praising Hugh as very modern. I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. While the leaders on stage delivered long-winded speeches, Hugh and I sat next to each other below, whispering quietly. Why did you donate buildings? He lowered his head and spoke softly. They said my name would be engraved on the entrance. Every teacher and every student will see it every day. I thought you'd be able to see me. I fell silent for a moment. If I see your name, will it help me eat an extra meal? No. Hugh glanced around like he was doing something sneaky, then leaned closer. It's so you remember to get divorced. Chapter 19. I wanted a divorce, but Isaac only wanted to avoid reality, using the excuse of being busy with the new venue's renovation. He hadn't come home for a long time. When Hugh drove me home, we passed by the old training center. The original signboard had already been taken down, and workers were moving things out. I saw Isaac's car parked outside. "Let me off here. I need to talk to him anyway." Hugh pulled over. "I'll wait here for you." I walked in. The place was empty. The instruments had probably been moved long ago, and what remained were worthless odds and ends. Some people were carrying things. Some were buying up leftovers. Some were cleaning. I found an older cleaner and asked where Isaac was. Her Mandarin wasn't very clear. She said something about dealing with network relocation. I could only wander around. I went upstairs. Everything was in disarray. All the doors were open. Even the restroom sign in the corner had been removed, but there was one door next to it that was closed. I was a bit surprised. I pushed it, but it was locked. The cleaner noticed me. "Boss's wife. Are you trying to use the restroom? The one inside still works. This accessible restroom hasn't been usable for a long time." Accessible restroom? I froze in place, slowly turning around, not knowing what expression I had on my face. "How long has it been broken?" "A long time. Ever since I started working here. I've never seen it opened." My fingers dug into my palm, feeling the sharp sting. "Who has the key?" "The boss, probably." I turned and walked away quickly, called a locksmith, and had the door opened. The space inside was very narrow. The floor and ceiling were white, and only the handrails were bright yellow, but there were many of them. Next to the toilet, on both sides of the sink, across the walls, lines and supports cut the space into fragmented sections. I reached out and gripped one of the rails, with a little force. It was indeed very sturdy. There's nothing there, only cold lines. When you go in, you can only stand. But everywhere are points of leverage. You can choose any one of them and completely hand yourself over to the other person, and at the same time, completely control them. Ever since I resigned to start my business, I've been under immense pressure. Sometimes I lock myself in the restroom, cutting off all outside contact. I didn't want to bring any of my emotions to you, but I still failed to take care of you. Tiffany's voice and Isaac's voice alternated in my mind, playing over and over. I felt suffocated. I couldn't even stand properly, both hands bracing against the sink. After a long time, I lifted my head and saw myself in the mirror, an unbearably miserable face. At that moment, I felt like I had split into two people. I should have been cold and indifferent. Yet the person in the mirror was crying, my vision gradually blurring. I drifted into a daze. Through the mirror, I even saw Isaac, standing behind me, holding Tiffany tightly by the waist. The two of them entangled together. I spun around abruptly, swinging my hand hard at the illusion, but instead, my wrist was caught. "Elise?" Hugh looked at me in confusion. Only then did I come back to my senses. Stumbling half a step forward, Hugh froze for a moment, then reached out to steady my arm. "What's wrong?" I stared at him silently, my mind in chaos, unable to calm down. Suddenly, a thought surfaced, and I lowered my head, leaning toward him. Hugh reacted sharply and avoided me, narrowing his eyes slightly. "Elise?" His tone changed. Then he glanced around, his expression thoughtful, though he raised a brow as if the idea seemed too absurd. I steadied myself and said weakly, "Help me close the door." He nodded, turned around, and pushed the door halfway. "Then I'll head out." Before he finished speaking, I pushed from behind. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. Hugh turned around, barely having time to react before I shoved him hard. His back hit the door, and he sucked in a breath from the pain. Before he could speak, all his words were cut off. Hugh stared at me, stunned. Because of the height difference, I pressed my hand against his chest and tilted my head up to kiss him, deeply. Just to reach him, I had to stand on my toes. Just as I was about to lose my balance, a hand suddenly came around my waist, holding me steady, slowly moving upward. Hugh lowered his head. I thought he had given in, so I let my guard down, but in the next second, he gripped my shoulders with both hands and pulled me away, his breathing slightly heavy. "Elise, what are you doing?" Actually, I didn't know either. I wanted to know just as much. Meeting Hugh's searching gaze, a wave of overwhelming grievance surged inside me, like damp lake water rising, completely drowning my rationality. Chapter 20. Am I not pretty enough? I couldn't help reaching out, my fingertips brushing against his moving Adam's apple. Hugh. Between Tiffany and me, who's prettier? Does that even matter? He grabbed my hand impatiently, lowered his head to meet my gaze, and sighed. You. I pressed my lips together, my nose stinging. Then why don't you like me? Hugh touched my face, his eyes full of tenderness. Elise. I'm sorry, I'm not him. I froze for a moment. Did he think I had mistaken him for someone else? I blinked, tears sliding down, my voice calm. I know who you are. You're Hugh. Then why won't you kiss me? He paused, his voice hoarse. I'm not that kind of man. He was a decent man. I thought for a moment, wrapped my arms around his waist, and leaned close to his ear. Other than my husband Isaac, I've never been with anyone else. The body in my arms stiffened noticeably. I lifted my head to look at him. Hugh's ears had turned a deep red, and his Adam's apple moved visibly. He looked down at me, his breathing growing heavier, uneven. You're really good at testing people. Hugh pulled me into his arms with one hand and lifted the hem of my dress slightly with the other, almost lifting me off the ground as he lowered his head and kissed me deeply. He was completely different from Isaac. Isaac was gentle and patient. Hugh was clearly more forceful, taking full control. He pressed me against the wall as he kissed me, moving from my chin to my neck with deliberate care. I tilted my head back slightly, catching my breath, looking at my reflection in the mirror, remembering what Tiffany had said. Hand yourself completely over to the other person, and at the same time, you completely control them. So that's what it meant. Had enough? He suddenly stopped. I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. Seeing my complicated expression, Hugh couldn't help but laugh. We'll continue the rest another time. He helped straighten my clothes. I don't like doing this kind of thing in a restroom. I paused, annoyed. You're acting like you're such a good person. I'm not acting, Hugh said frankly. Like an obedient student. I prefer places with a good view. Haven't you noticed? I fell silent. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound from outside the door, like someone using a key. Hugh moved in front of me protectively. The door was flung open, and Isaac stood there, his expression extremely dark. Don't you two know there are cameras outside? I said nothing, standing where I was, fixing my hair. That gesture clearly provoked Isaac. He suddenly rushed forward, grabbed my arm, and yanked me to his side. Hugh looked him up and down without the slightest fear, the corner of his lips curling into a cold, ambiguous smile. Isaac? We finally meet. Isaac turned to him, almost gritting his teeth. President Santos, you should keep your distance from someone else's wife. Hugh stepped forward half a step. Isaac immediately pulled me behind him, and seeing that, Hugh didn't move further. You should come at me, not blame her. Isaac glared at him, his eyes reddening, his fists clenched tightly. But after a moment of staring at Hugh, he slowly relaxed his grip. I won't fall for your trap. Isaac dragged me downstairs, shoved me into the car, and slammed the door shut. He hit the gas and drove off. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Hugh's car chasing after us. Let me out, Isaac! But he ignored me, staring straight ahead. You should apologize to me, Elise. I suddenly let out a cold laugh. Apologize for what? For doing the same thing, in the same place, as you? Isaac's grip on the steering wheel tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. I sat up straight, staring directly into his eyes, my tone pressing. Really? When you opened the door just now, there was no one outside anymore. That's because you had already arrived, right? You waited until we were quiet before deciding to open the door. What were you afraid of? Don't you know? He suddenly turned to look at me. I didn't want to embarrass you. Am I not embarrassed enough already? I shouted hysterically. Isaac froze. He had never seen me this out of control before. I slumped back into the seat, letting out a breath as tears streamed freely down my face. Let's get a divorce. Isaac, you're making me hate myself more and more. Isaac silently slowed the car. After a long while, he spoke a single sentence. I love you. I turned my face away, biting my lip tightly. My face felt cold as I reached out and rolled down the window. The wind rushed in, scattering his words without leaving a trace. Chapter 21. Isaac's car was forced to a stop by Hugh. It was obvious that Hugh had been speeding. Neither car could be driven anymore. Hugh, Isaac, and I found a private room to talk. In front of others, Isaac regained his usual calm demeanor. As soon as he spoke, he made his stance clear. He would not agree to a divorce. As long as we're not divorced, we're still legally husband and wife. President Santos, a man of your status, are you really going to share a woman with me? I gently closed my eyes. Hugh pushed a box of tissues toward me before continuing to confront Isaac. In fact, we have shared one before. He deliberately paused, savoring Isaac's expression. Just not this one. Isaac was both furious and confused. What exactly are you talking about? Hugh let out a soft chuckle. Do you want me to call Tiffany over? Isaac froze completely, as if nailed to the spot. You know Tiffany? Hugh casually sat down beside me. Isaac, weren't you wondering how I knew him? I slowly raised my head and looked at Isaac. The person you cheated with was his kept woman. Isaac looked like he had been struck by lightning. His face turned pale, then flushed, then pale again. I was very familiar with that kind of humiliation. Hugh leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs, watching him with interest. Isaac, tell me, since you put a green hat on me, how should we settle this? I wasn't even planning to pursue it, but now you're making such a big deal out of my situation with Elise. No sense of reciprocity at all. That's a bit too much, don't you think? Isaac could barely stand. Tiffany, he suddenly seemed to snap back to reality. I never actually slept with her. He came over to me, crouched down, and hugged my legs. Are you going to believe someone else instead of me? I looked at him coldly. I saw you two kissing. She threw herself at me. If you had watched for one more second, you would have seen me push her away. Isaac grew emotional, even breaking into tears. I closed my eyes deeply. At this point, what was the point? Why keep deceiving himself? Hugh couldn't stand it anymore. He grabbed Isaac and shoved him back. Are you done? I spent a lot of money to buy a video from Tiffany. You were careful. Your face isn't in it, but your hands and your voice are. I'm sure she could identify you, though I haven't shown it to her yet. I looked up in shock. So, he had the evidence all along? Hugh looked at his disheveled rival and asked seriously. Isaac, are you sure you want to completely destroy her image of you? After hearing this, Isaac stared at me, motionless. Finally, he covered his face with one hand, letting out a painful sob as his body trembled. In the end, he admitted it, holding on to the last shred of hope. Isaac came to me and spoke cautiously. Elise, can you forgive me? I'll forgive you too. Let's just treat this as both of us making a mistake and forgive each other, okay? I swear I'll cut things off with Tiffany. I never loved her. I was just under too much pressure at the time. The one I love is you. I never thought about leaving you. Looking at Isaac crying uncontrollably, I suddenly felt much calmer. So that was it. His calmness before had been built on my pain. Now that he was the one bearing that pain, I became calm instead. No, I gave my answer. Let's get a divorce. Hugh took my hand and pulled me behind him protectively. Isaac, I've been waiting long enough. You'll proceed with a settlement divorce. As for the division of property, you're at fault, so you should leave with nothing. If you don't cooperate, I'll hand the evidence over to a lawyer. Isaac opened his mouth, his face pale. I understand. I gave him one last look. Isaac, at least until today, I was innocent with him. Hugh frowned, pulled me along, and walked out, muttering softly, at a time like this, why are you still lying to him? She didn't lie to me. I believe her. Isaac suddenly rushed after us, running up to Hugh's car window. I sat inside as Hugh lowered the window. Something else? You're not her type, Isaac said, having chased after us just to say that. Hugh curled his lips dismissively. Taste can be cultivated. He turned his head forward, expression calm, slowly raising the window, turning the steering wheel, and leaving Isaac far behind. I sat there with my head lowered, not thinking about anything, as if all my strength had been drained. After a long while, Hugh suddenly spoke. What do you think? About what? I didn't know what he meant. My type. His gaze drifted, fingers resting lightly on the steering wheel without moving. You seem to prefer gentle guys. I paused. I don't think so. You do, Hugh said firmly. Isaac noticed that, so he adjusted himself to match your preference. He paused, then turned to look at me. Now I've noticed it too, but I won't do that. I want you to like the real me. I froze for a moment, as if realizing something. After a while, I nodded. I will. Good. Hugh held the steering wheel, a faint smile forming at the corner of his lips. I'll take you to dinner. Congratulations, to you. And to me. Chapter 22. Isaac signed the divorce agreement. All the assets were transferred to me, including the company under his name. He pushed the agreement in front of me. I'm doing this, it has nothing to do with Hugh, even though this was exactly the outcome I wanted. Before signing, I still asked him, this is everything you've worked for, are you sure? Isaac looked at me and suddenly smiled. Actually, for you in the future, this won't amount to much anyway. I fell silent for a moment. But Tiffany, don't mention her again. We've already broken up. Isaac coldly dropped his pen, cutting me off. The last time you called me crying at school, I had already ended things with her. I looked at him for a moment, then lowered my head and signed without hesitation. When I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I received a call from Hugh. I nodded as I listened. Okay, I'm done. I'll take a taxi over now. Isaac followed behind me. He didn't come pick you up. He's busy. I stepped down the stairs. I'll take you. No need. That was how Isaac and I parted ways. We each got into our own cars, only to end up getting off at the same place. Hugh was waiting downstairs at my place, along with a moving company and a real estate agent, a whole operation. As soon as Isaac got out of his car, Hugh pointed at him and instructed the people beside him. Just follow him upstairs. Those moving, move. Those taking photos, take photos. Isaac's expression darkened as he turned to me. You're selling the house? I gave a soft mum. Hugh walked over, took my hand, and naturally pulled me into his arms. Isaac, this is goodbye. Isaac looked at us, opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. Hugh drove me away. Where are my things going to be moved? He seemed to have already decided. The room at the end of the right side on the second floor of my house. To his house? I coughed lightly. What for? He didn't answer directly. It has a good view. I froze for a moment, turned my face away to look out the window. My heart suddenly beat faster, and my cheeks warmed. I soon found out the room at the end of the right side on the second floor was his master bedroom. I was thrown onto the soft bed as Hugh leaned over me. He held my wrist firmly with one hand, while the other pulled my shirt loose from my skirt. My face burned hot as I tilted my head back, too embarrassed to look at him. Hugh. His voice carried a faint teasing smile. What are you calling me for? I'm busy. I bit my lip, my body trembling slightly, and finally tried to push him with my knee, but he dodged it easily. He paused, climbed up slightly, and stared at me for a moment. His gaze darkened, his lips damp and glistening, his voice hoarse. When I first met you, I thought you'd be some woman crying and demanding justice. But instead, a cold, elegant, beautiful married woman walked in and told me her husband cheated on her. It felt like something out of a movie. Do you know what I felt? He curled his lips in satisfaction. In that instant, I forgave all the trouble Tiffany caused me. I lowered my eyes slightly and glanced at him. So you were already thinking about doing this to me back then? He leaned closer and whispered, half. And the other half? The other half was hesitation. I thought, if even a beauty like you was being neglected by your husband, he must be someone formidable. That would have made things troublesome. I smiled faintly and turned my head away. But he grabbed my chin, turning my face back, his thumb pressing firmly across my lips. You smudged my lipstick. It looks better this way. Hugh stared at me intently, his gaze gradually deepening. He leaned close to my ear, his voice carrying a teasing edge. You're in trouble. I'm not a decent man in bed. My eyes widened. You. But before I could finish, his kiss swallowed the rest of my words. Bit by bit, I was overtaken by him, responding instinctively. New sensations surged through me, and I almost forgot everything except Hugh's name, repeating it over and over. Who? Hugh, you really are something else. When I woke up, I saw the view outside the floor-to-ceiling window, lush green mountains stretching into the distance. Wide and open, the sky above was a pale blue-green, with the occasional bird flying past, letting out crisp calls. I stood there, holding a glass of water. Hugh came up behind me and wrapped his arms around me. Elise, what are you thinking about? I leaned back against him, placing my hand over his, and turned my head to look at him. Summer has come. He lowered his eyes slightly and held me tighter. That sounds romantic. We slept our way into summer. The rainy, uncertain spring had finally ended.